Welcome to the 6th Annual DoD Pride Month event. I'm Senior Airman Anthony Cheers and a member of the DoD Pride Employee Resource Group. DoD Pride is comprised of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender civilians, military members, contractors, and allies of the LGBT community. I'm greatly honored and proud to be able to reserve and support this country along with fellow civilians and military members across the nation and the globe. Our theme for this year's ceremony is service, and this event is an opportunity for the entire DoD community to come together and celebrate the great diversity of the American people and the enormous contributions of the LGBT civilians and military members serving here and around the world in the defense of this great nation. Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin our official program, we ask that you stand as we recognize a moment of silence. One year ago today, we witnessed the worst mass shooting in U.S. history at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Florida, where 49 innocent people lost their lives. In honor of their memory, we ask that you join us in recognizing a moment of silence. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the presentation of the colors and the national anthem. Please be seated. Please join me in a round of applause for the United States Army Brass Quartet for that wonderful rendition of the national anthem. It is my pleasure to introduce our first speaker for today. Mr. Anthony Kurta is performing the duties of the Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness. A member of the Senior Executive Service, he is responsible for the recruiting, retention, compensation, travel, and the related human resource management for the 1.4 million active duty military members of the U.S. Armed Services. He has over 32 years of military service in the United States Navy. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Anthony Kurta.
Well, thank you, and good morning. They don't tell you how to get from those stairs back through here, so I went through some strange places in a couple of seconds there. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for a way too kind and detailed introduction, but it is great to be here today. So Congressman Takano, our DoD Pride co-chairs, Mr. Raines and Mr. Hatt, other distinguished guests, visitors, families, friends, Department of Defense leaders, other members of our total force, welcome today. I'd first like to express my appreciation for the talented individuals and the groups who organized, planned, and are providing support for today's event. Although they've departed, that includes the United States Army Band Brass Quintet and their superb rendition of our national anthem. As we're speaking with the Congressman beforehand, that always adds an element of solemnity and circumstance to each one of these occasions. The special events team can't go without notice here at the Pentagon Building Management Office, who helped set up the courtyard and then were able on very short notice to pivot and make sure that we were set up here today. Recognize the Office of Diversity Management and Equal Opportunity, led by C.J. Johnson and his team. C.J., thank you. As always, the Army Video Team, and of course the Joint Armed Forces Color Guard team from Military District, Washington. So thanks for everybody who helped ensure today is a success. I also want to say thank you for the invitation to this important event. Today we recognize that all men and women who serve, including civilian and military personnel in the LGBT community, are equal contributing members of the DoD total force. Diversity is more than race, gender, and ethnicity. It includes, among other things, diversity of thought, diversity of ability, diversity of background, diversity of language, culture, and skill. It is very broad. And whether in garrison or in the field, in the fleet or in the wing, at home or abroad, we recognize all men and women of the United States Armed Forces, civilians, contractors, as equal contributing members of the DoD total force. As we commemorate LGBT Pride Month, let us reflect on the service and sacrifice of all DoD members, past and present. We take pride in the contributions of all who defend and serve our country and rely on the diversity of our members in order to meet our mission. We thank you not only for what you have contributed in the past, for what you do each day, but also for what you will do in the future for the total force and this great nation. Again, thank you for having me here today.
Thank you, Mr. Kurta, for those inspiring remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my privilege to welcome someone who also knows a great deal about service, Major General Therese Rose. Major General Rose is the Chief of Staff for Logistics, Engineering, and Force Protection for the headquarters of the United States Air Force here in Washington, D.C. She has served this nation as a member of the Air Force since 1984, and we are delighted that she has chosen to share her thoughts on service with us today. Major General Rose.
Distinguished guests, LGBT brethren, both military and civilian, I'm honored to be here today to provide remarks at this 6th Annual DoD Pentagon Pride event. Our theme today is service, and as this is the very day that I transitioned from active military service to the retired reserve, I've been reflecting on service a lot. and I want to share those thoughts with you. Not long ago, I spoke at an event celebrating Miss Nadine Nagel, a World War II WASP, 92 years young. Ms. Nagel participated in one of our nation's earliest forays into diversity service. Now, naysayers will contend that diversity is just some aspect of political correctness, but to them I say, look to history. World War II provides bold insight into the power of inclusion as opposed to exclusion. While our enemies were trying to prop up the superiority of their monolithic cultures, we were utilizing the vast and distinct skill sets our diverse nation had to offer. Look at examples of Rosie the Riveter, a symbol of civilian women who supported the industrial war effort. In the military, we had our Tuskegee Airmen, Navajo Code Talkers, and those auxiliary units like the WACs and the WAVES and the WASPs. Our ally, Great Britain, had Alan Turing. A brilliant code breaker, Turing is widely regarded as one of the most instrumental individuals in bringing about the end of the war. He was later prosecuted for homosexuality and committed suicide in 1954. The Queen granted him a posthumous pardon in 2013, and on his memorial is a plaque that reads, Alan Turing, father of computer science, mathematician, logician, wartime codebreaker, victim of prejudice. Diversity recruitment in 1942 was a unique approach to fulfilling an emergent need. Diversity recruitment today is a much more deliberate strategy. Most businesses and our military have policies and training sessions that require their members to embrace diversity. But if it's just policy on paper or words in a mandatory training class, then those efforts are very much like ceremonial fringe on a flag. It looks pretty, but it's not adding any substantial or intrinsic benefit. To really benefit, we must believe, truly believe, that the principles of inclusion are essential to the well-being of our nation and our people. Diversity is not ceremonial fringe. It is the fabric, the very thread going through every inch of that flag, holding it together and making it strong. Those groups I mentioned earlier, the Tuskegee Airmen, the WASP, etc., they're not honored because of their diversity. They're honored because of their dedication and the contribution and the value that they brought to their service. And that's the lesson for us all. What value do we bring? And how can we continue to bring more and more value each and every day? Pride gatherings are never yay, I'm gay events. We do ourselves a disservice if we think the celebration is about us, because it's not. When it comes to service, nothing is ever about one person or a group of persons. That's not a bad thing. It's merely recognition that we are part of something much greater. Celebrating Pride Month or any other diversity month is really about validating that there is one inherent trait we all possess and our nation benefits from, and that's the diversity in our unique backgrounds and experience. Embracing an individual's strengths, his or her perspectives or capabilities, helps us build and sustain a diverse, inclusive work culture that ultimately strengthens our service. When it comes to work culture, there's a saying, what you permit, you promote. And make no mistake, silence is permitting. Under the institutionalized discrimination of don't ask, don't tell, our silence permitted us to maintain our careers. Our silence also permitted the military to maintain valuable resources. My silence under don't ask, don't tell was my struggle. And to many in this audience, it was your struggle as well. And while great advances have been made, we still endure subtle and not so subtle prejudices and challenges to our right to be who we are and to serve with dignity and respect. I share your apprehension as we witness efforts at home and abroad to turn back the clock on our justified advances. So now, more than ever, we must not stand silent in the face of prejudice, injustice, or atrocity. Our permitting silence will serve only to promote it. Now, some people say the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell was a non-issue for the military, and in some respects it was. The day after repeal, things were pretty much business as usual, which supported what repeal proponents had said all along, that we cared more about the mission than we did about who someone loved. But it was a different world entirely for those of us who no longer had to live under that shadow and lie by omission if we wanted to serve, suffering those thousands of cuts to our integrity each and every day. Being able to serve openly and authentically has been a sea change for myself and others, and that has added to my value as a military member, and yours as well. For that reason, we must focus our actions, and they must purposely shift from acknowledging our past struggle to advancing our future heritage. We must resist those attempts to marginalize us because our heritage, enabled by self-sacrificing pioneers, must be preserved and advanced upon, especially for our transgender citizens and military members. We live in changing times, but with change comes challenge, with challenge comes opportunity. Some folks think that avoiding challenges will bring them peace. They fail to understand that the peace we have comes from earlier challenges that were faced and mastered. To truly diminish yesterday's struggle, enhance our value, and embrace our heritage, we must have courage. And if an essential ingredient to leadership is authenticity, you'll need courage to be your authentic self, and it won't always be easy. Most folks are hardwired to be affected by the bad comments more than the positive ones. It's like Velcro, it's like the brain is Velcro for the bad and Teflon for the good. It doesn't have to be that way. A positive attitude in the face of adversity will always be our greatest ally. We can be pitiful or we can be powerful, but we cannot be both. We must choose, and we all have that ability. It comes from within, to choose positive and to choose powerful. My almost 34-year career spanned 3 phases: an exclusion phase, a seclusion phase, and finally, happily, inclusion. Today, inclusion allows me to do the simplest yet most profound act, which is to recognize my wife, Jules, a 22-year Navy veteran in her own right. Jules has always been my #1 cheerleader, partner, and advocate. She took care of me so that I could serve. It means the world to be able to recognize her and thank her for that love and support. So, I transition today from active service, but I do not retire, because I will never retire from being invested in the well-being of our nation and its citizens. That was the oath of service that I took, and I have no intent to abandon it just because I no longer have the honor to wear the uniform every day. My final thought about service is that I feel lucky to have had a calling that makes saying goodbye so hard. And I wish you all the very best in what life has to offer as you continue in the proud tradition of service. Delivering our keynote address today is Congressman Mark Takano of California. After more than 20 years as a teacher and elected official in Riverside County, Congressman Takano became the first openly gay person of color to be elected to Congress in 2012. He is now in his third congressional term and serves as vice-ranking member of the House Committee on Veterans Affairs, as a member of the Education and Workforce Committee, and on the Science, Space, and Technology Committee. Embodying our theme of service, please welcome Congressman Mark Takano.
Well, good morning. I think it still is morning. Well, thank you for that introduction, General Rose, Mr. Secretary. Military Brass Quartet, my, what an impressive welcome. Walking through the halls of the Pentagon is truly an amazing experience. My Chief of Staff and I drove down here, both of us very excited because we'd never been to the Pentagon. And I don't know if members of the public are ever allowed to come here, but truly, to those who might be looking at this speech now or later, truly impressive to see the displays of what our military does, the humanitarian accomplishments. I'm so proud of our country and so proud of what you do. Quite an amazing experience to be here and to walk in to the sounds of the brass quartet. Really, I think, lays the groundwork for the gravity and the dignity of this moment. I have to say, though, that I am very, very envious of the civilian defense employee who was wearing a seersucker suit this morning. My biggest decision this morning is what was I going to wear, and I wanted to wear the seersucker so badly because I read that the temperature was going to be 90 degrees, and but in deference to those who are live streaming this, I thought that the vibrations caused by the fine pinstripes might be too distracting. In California yesterday, I could show up to the Pride March. Wearing a suit and tie, and I was criticized, well, not criticized, but made fun of for overdressing for a march. But I knew that my leader, Nancy Pelosi, would be in that march wearing heels, and that I would look ridiculous standing next to her. She's known for wearing Armani at labor protests, and she marched that whole 3.5-mile march in those heels, and the weather was merciful enough so that I could do it myself. I not wear heels, but although my chief said he's going to challenge me to wear heels in the next march, and because it's like that whole thing about Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. She could do everything that he could do, only backwards and in heels. Maxine Waters did the same thing, and so amazing. I want to just tell you how honored I am to be here and share a few thoughts on what this month means to me. The simple fact that I'm here speaking with you today is evidence of our country's remarkable progress toward equality for the LGBT community. When I was growing up, the idea that I would be standing here at the Pentagon as an openly gay man representing Riverside, California in Congress, and there's someone who's here from Marina Del Rey I met earlier, and he knows Riverside. Speaking at the Department of Defense about LGBT Pride, that would have been unthinkable for a number of reasons. There was a time when Riverside was much more socially conservative than it is now, and a lot less embracing of the gay community. And I didn't honestly know if an LGBT candidate for Congress could win an election in my hometown, in my area, my district. There was a time when the simple act of coming out was radical and dangerous, though in some communities that remains the case today. It is still radical and dangerous. And there was a time when the Department of Defense discouraged and hid its diversity instead of celebrating it, as we are today. The progress that has been made, that has made this moment possible, is proof that we really should never underestimate America's capacity to remake itself for the better. Pride Month is a time to celebrate how far we've come. But at the same time, Pride Month is a reminder that progress, tolerance, and fairness are not inevitable. Dr. Martin Luther King famously told us that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. And although he was a devoutly religious man, he was not implying that the moral universe is on autopilot and that human effort is irrelevant. His words were not an invitation to sit back and wait for change, but rather a promise that if we commit ourselves to the fight for justice and equality, history will reward us. And that sentiment is sort of echoed in the words of John F. Kennedy. These words have always inspired me as much as that brass band's rendition of Stand Up. He said, with a good conscience as our only sure reward, with history as the final judge of our deeds, let us go forth and lead the land we love, asking His blessing and His help, but knowing that here on earth, God's work must truly be our own. And that's always kind of struck a deep chord in me, that God's work must be our own. People like Harvey Milk and more recently Ellen DeGeneres and the millions of people who made the brave decision to come out, and I mean the millions of people who made the decision to come out and be who they are, these people bended our society toward justice and changed America for the better. And I want to emphasize the trans individuals who are among the fiercest of those and first and earliest to stand up for themselves and the community. And let there be no doubt of the power of high heels. Or not. I mean, it's not all trans people are in heels. Virginia Phillips, the federal district court judge sitting in California's Central District in California, my hometown, she became the first judge to rule against Don't Ask, Don't Tell in the courts. And she received terrible threats to her safety for doing so. She bended our society toward justice. Now, this is a time to remember the people and organizations that have contributed to the cause of equality, and that includes the Department of Defense. The repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, the confirmation of Eric Fanning as the first openly gay service secretary, and the rhetorical shift in how the military talks to and about the LGBT community, these are milestones that have echoed across the country and around the world. The Department of Defense must continue to be a leader in advancing LGBT equality because, as you all know, diversity is not just a matter of fairness and morality. It's really critical to a strong and effective military. Even with the progress we've made, there are still people across this nation who crave the opportunity to serve but do not feel welcomed in the military, and this is a serious challenge with severe consequences. Eric Fanning himself said he decided not to pursue a career in military service because he refused to live his life in secret. And think of how many smart, capable Americans are not in uniform because they were either implicitly or explicitly told they did not belong. Indeed, one of the most compelling moments in the lead-up to the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell was the revelation that dozens of Arab linguists were dismissed solely on the basis of their sexual orientation. When I was 18 years old, I took the ASVAB, and I talked to recruiters, or rather the recruiters talked to me, about enlisting in the military. But as I was coming to terms with my own identity and receiving college acceptances, I decided to forego a career in the military where I didn't think that I would be accepted for who I was. And General Rose, thank you for reminding me of that story of Alan Turing. It's a very poignant story. Someone who contributed so much to the field of computer science and who had an outsized impact on the outcome of World War II. You know, cracking the code of the Enigma machine. It's a story. It was celebrated in the movie and with Dustin Crumbach, whatever his name is. But sorry, Dustin, I can't remember your name. But you know, a tremendous story about what the price we pay for not extending the opportunity for everyone to make a difference. By supporting the LGBT community, the military will unlock a pool of talent that will help defend our security and our freedom for generations to come. And I want to share one personal example of what happens when you provide the opportunity to serve. Now, along with the Tuskegee Airmen, the various women who served in our military, and by the way, one of the great women who served in our military, I believe it was with the WASPs, is Jackie Cochran Odom. She actually lived in my county. She ran for Congress against actually the first Asian American who won office in 1956. Kind of undeservedly a footnote, but she was the first woman to actually break the sound barrier. Intriguing character, all in her own right. The Code Talkers, another example. Prior to the end of World War II, we had a number of segregated military fighting units, and that was only changed by executive order by President Truman afterward. And if we reflect on the role of the military in civil rights, it's been a tremendous, tremendous platform for how our country has become a more perfect union. And it all has to do with the opportunity to serve. This year marks the 75th anniversary of President Roosevelt's Executive Order 9066, which led to the internment of 120,000 Japanese Americans, including my grandfathers, my grandmothers, both my parents, and much of my extended family. What few people know is that the executive order was accompanied by a decision to label all draft-age Americans of Japanese ancestry enemy aliens who were not eligible to serve in the military. They were given the lowest, least desirable rating. A year later, a group of Japanese Americans eager to show their allegiance to this country actually lobbied for the opportunity to serve. And to the military's credit, they allowed them to serve. They formed the 442nd Regimental Combat Team of the United States Army, an all-Japanese-American fighting unit that was sent to the front lines of World War II, even as their families were unjustly imprisoned back here in the United States. Given the opportunity to serve, that small segregated unit, in which 3 of my great-uncles served, defied the belief that Japanese Americans were enemies of our country. The unit's motto was, "Go for broke," a reflection of their willingness to put everything on the line for a country that viewed them suspiciously at best. Now, the 442nd Unit, once considered a group of enemy aliens, became one of the most decorated units for its size and length of service in the history of the U.S. military. The 18,000 men of the 442nd earned more than 9,000 Purple Hearts, 21 Medals of Honor, and 7 Presidential Unit citations. In fact, they were known as the Purple Heart Battalion. Now, I can feel the emotion welling up as I kind of try to struggle to say these next few lines. What is poignant to me is my great-uncle Mon, who died in combat in Massa, Italy, in April 1945, 72 years ago, 2 months ago. I think about a young 23-year-old giving 100% for his country when his country was not guaranteeing 100% to him. I have to say that within a couple of months of my taking my oath of office for the first time, I sat with Secretary Shinseki at the Department of Veterans Affairs, and he has a portrait of the battle for the Lost Battalion. And you don't know that story of the Battle of the Lost Battalion. A lot of people don't, and he had it hanging up on his wall. And another member of Congress had never known the story about the 442nd, asked him about it, and he explained that, just as I did, who the 442nd was. And he explained the battle. The battle was about a group of Texans that were trapped behind enemy lines for several days, and a unit of the 442nd was ordered to go and rescue them. So these short little Japanese Americans rescuing these tall Texans was remembered by Governor Connolly a couple of decades later, and he made them honorary Texans. Secretary Shinseki looked at me and he said, "You, Congressman, would not be here today if it were not for that unit." I think about the many LGBT Americans who also have stepped forward and have been stigmatized and discriminated against in return. The founders wrote in the preamble of the Constitution that they endeavored to form a more perfect union with the knowledge that the union was not yet and will never be perfect. And by embracing our basic American principles, but, let me restate that, but by embracing our basic American principles, we can get that much closer to being a perfect union. We know that Americanism is not defined by a common race, color, creed, national origin, or sexual orientation. It is defined by some very powerful ideas, among them equality before the law, equality of dignity, and the freedom to be who you are. And most importantly, a country that strives to fulfill the promise of these ideals is a country worth fighting for. With your help, your commitment to the cause of equality, we will fulfill the promise of those ideals, and we will continue to become a more perfect union. What an amazing thing it was in the first 6 months of office also. It was a very heady time after that moment with Secretary Shinseki to be invited to the Service Members Legal Defense Network's gala. I was in my tuxedo. I didn't wear my seersucker to that event, but to walk to the various service academies and to see each table filled with people in dress uniform, often with their same-sex partner, and to meet an officer who identified himself as the advisor for the Gay-Straight Alliance at the Service Academy, and to see our service members all in full dress uniform, unafraid, unintimidated. This was truly a new reality that I had not expected to see as a member of Congress. And that's not change that I brought about. I mean, I arrived after the fact, but I know that there are people in this room and people who are listening to the live stream who worked very, very hard to bring that moment about, and we're going to have to work very, very hard so that never again do we return to the old ways, and I don't think that's going to happen. I think America has changed for the better, and we are a stronger nation, a nation that's even more worth fighting for. So I want to thank all of you, each and every one of you, for your service profoundly. Thank you for your service. Happy Pride, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Major General Rose and Representative Takano. In line with this year's theme of service, We will now honor two individuals who have made a significant impact on the lives of DoD service members and civilians, specifically through the service to the nation and their commitment to allowing others to do the same through their advocacy for equality. Here to present the DoD Pride Civilian Leadership Award are Lieutenant Colonel Retired John J. Masters and Major Brian Fram. Gentlemen, would you please come forward?
Amanda Simpson served as the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Operational Energy from 2015 to 2017. In this role, she was the principal advisor to the Secretary of Defense on all matters related to the $19 billion Department of Defense energy budget. Prior to this, Ms. Simpson served as the first Executive Director, Office of Energy Initiatives, in the Office of the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Installations, Energy, and Environment. Amongst her projects, she and her team achieved total electrical grid independence for 3 major Army installations and oversaw the construction of the largest solar array in the history of the Department of Defense, all without spending DoD funds. Ms. Simpson was the first transgender presidential appointee and has set a positive example through her dedication to the nation's defense for all of us to follow. She has also served as the board member of the Arizona Human Rights Fund and the National Center for Transgender Equality, among other boards. It is now our honor to present her with the 2017 Department of Defense Pride Civilian Leadership Award. Ms. Simpson.
Well, thank you, John, and thank you, Major Brian. And thank everyone for honoring me with this recognition. It's really nice to be invited back before you all forgot who I was. And quite frankly, I miss this building for 2 reasons. First and foremost, it's about what goes on here, the mission. What goes on between these 5 walls is of the utmost importance to maintaining a ready, resilient, and effective military force. The decisions that are made here regarding the current and future manning, equipping, training, and posturing are critical to the security of our nation. And it is that security that allows each of us to enjoy the freedoms and liberties that we expect, crave, and have become accustomed to. This was always of paramount importance to me and influenced every decision that I made. But to accomplish that mission relies on the other aspect that I miss, the people. The uniformed military, civilians, and contractors that toil to maintain the highest standards that their responsibility demands are the heart and soul of this building. It was the people that I relied on for guidance, for advice, and support. For without it, I would not have been able to lead. They had my support, and I thank many of you who are here today. Regardless of position, each individual knows that it is necessary to give their best at all times to accomplish the assigned mission. There is no part-time or ability to leave part of yourself at home. It becomes a full family effort. It requires the whole and true self to be present and focused. And that is why we are here again today, to celebrate, but also to remind all that in order to continue attracting the best, the brightest, the loyal, and the dedicated, This society must embrace diversity and value the differences between us to build a stronger union. It should not matter as to the color of your skin, ethnic origin, who you love, or particularly what is or is not between your legs, or even if you have both legs. It's about pride in yourself, pride in your work, and pride in your country. Once again, I thank you for this recognition, for this honor, and I will take it as an affirmation that I've done good. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Simmons. Simpson. Excuse me. Here to present the DoD Pride Military Leadership Award are Demita Swyback and Alex Chandler. Ladies, would you please come forward?
Good morning. Major General Tammy Smith is Deputy Commanding General for Sustainment at 8th Army, Republic of Korea. She is the first female general officer to serve in an 8th Army headquarters level position. Along with her wife, Tracy Hepner, she has advocated for military families through their volunteer work with the Military Partners and Families Coalition, an organization that provides support, education, resources, and advocacy for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender military partners and their families. General Smith has served her country with distinction in both active duty and Army Reserve leadership roles, and is a recipient of the Bronze Star and the Afghanistan Campaign Medal. In recognition of her historic career as the first openly LGBT flag officer in the U.S. military, for inspiring the next generation of LGBT military leaders, and for her critical support to LGBT military families, we present Major General Tammy Smith the 2017 DoD Pride Military Leadership Award.
I'm humbled to receive this leadership recognition today. And so I accept this not for myself, but on behalf of our service values and for those who have served in silence. Wearing this uniform is the greatest privilege of my life. When others see this uniform, whether it's worn by a recruiter in Des Moines, Iowa, or maybe a reservist in Dallas, Texas, or by any number of our military serving overseas, in all these examples, this uniform visibly represents our values. Our service values are the strength of our military. They are our true north. These values are drawn from the raw fabric of our American experience, an experience that tells us there is strength in diversity. We are stronger because of our differences, more capable of fighting and winning our nation's wars. The U.S. military has made positive strides on how to get to the best ideas, how to hear the most innovative voices from any place in the formation. It now, more than ever, values your difference. For the first 25 years of my career, I did not have a full voice. My contribution was filtered, my leadership cautious, my life compartmentalized. But like countless others here today, we continue to serve. But today, we can bring the full authenticity of who we are of who our families are to the military. And that's essential to readiness. Our cutting edge in the U.S. military isn't just our technology. It's the inclusive culture that allows our formations to think and act differently than our adversaries. Continue to have hope, and I will continue to be, as a senior leader, to be visible for you. Be who you are. Bring your best, most authentic self to represent the values of this uniform. Celebrate being a member or ally to the LGBT community, all in the name of service. Thank you for this award. While I still have the microphone, what I would like to do, generals will do this to you, is I just want to take a moment, as I know that today is General Rose's last day in uniform, and I just want to take a moment to recognize you and Jules with a coin on behalf of those who have served in silence, and that we no longer have to.
Please join me in a round of applause for our distinguished award winners. Before we close today's program, we would like to acknowledge all the support that made this year's celebration possible. DoD Pride would like to thank the U.S. Army Brass Quartet, the Washington Headquarters Service, Army Video, the Office of Diversity Management and Equal Opportunity, and the Pentagon Building Management Office for all of their support. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending today's celebration and above all, for supporting the DoD LGBT community in their service to the nation and for helping us honor our award recipients who stand for equality. This concludes our ceremony, but we would be delighted if you would join us for our reception located in the hallway. Thank you very much and happy Pride. Thank you.